What's going on, family? Sometimes when everything starts acting up, sometimes you just have to reset the whole kit and caboodle, fam. Listen, what we're gonna do, I want everybody to please, while you're there and while everybody's happy and excited, and we're back. We're gonna try to get in and get out, but please hit that like button for me. Just please hit that like button for me. Cost you no money just to hit that button. Just to hit that button. Those of you who are streaming back in here, hit that like button for me. Also, those, please go to donatebrown.com if you want to donate free. Go to subscribetobrown.com if you have not done that already, and add yourself to the free news mailing list just in case I need to contact you outside of YouTube. We never know what's going to happen. Hey, family, you got your libations? Because we're going to need them a little bit for this. We're going to try to get in and out. I'm going to try to get it in and out because we had technical issues tonight. But please, and I have an announcement. Drum roll, please. The next book club. I'm making the next book club announcement. The next thing we read is How the Irish Became White. That is our next read, fam. August the 1st. That's a Thursday. You know how we do it. Monday and Wednesday we'll have the usual show. Thursday we will have this show. That will be August the 1st. How the Irish became white. That's what we're going to be reading August the 1st. That's a Thursday. So get yourselves together, get ready for that. You're going to have your, get your book. You got plenty of time. We almost June right now. So you got plenty of time before August the 1st to get the book, read the book, and do what we got to do. I don't know if you all remember this thread, which was like last year, St. Patrick's Day. I don't know if you all remember this thread, but this was a whole thread of the kind of really, and we've talked about this book kind of on the edges or whatever, but this thread about like what the Irish owe, what they owe ADOS with their anti-blackness and how they were and how they behaved, and how they navigated anti-blackness to kind of become white and make sure that we were the ones who were left on the bottom. See, we don't ever try to be the ones we don't ever see like life for what it is, where everybody's trying to put somebody on the bottom. We just try to put everybody on top out of some type of moralism, and we don't understand that ain't nobody else playing that game. But it'll be good to have this conversation in terms of what we always talk about on this show about the normalization, white as like a normalization of Americanness, as opposed to what we normally think of whiteness as like a race. No, it's just kind of the Irish didn't come in that way either, and they got made that and they got normalized. So it's going to be a very interesting interesting conversation, to say the least. So I think we're going to, we have to have it. There are a lot of conversations that we have to have. You can only read one book at a time, fam. So what can you do? But that's what we're going to do. August the 1st. That's a Thursday. So, fam, listen. Let me just say this before we get started. And please hit that bell and subscribe if you're in the chat and you haven't hit that bell to get notifications, subscribe. Please do that for me. But I don't know I'm not going to say I don't know, because I do kind of know how many of you saw this article, because a lot of you sent this article to me. And I didn't earn slavery reparations, and I don't want them. And at first, when I started reading the article, I had decided initially, like, I don't think I want to deal with that. And only for the reason that it's so stupid. Like, the writing, the arguments made are like very antiquated and old and rudimentary and elementary. And I decided, like, I don't really want to do anything quite that stupid, because we're supposed to be on Politics 102, closing in on 103. And I don't want to go to I don't want to go back there and deal with something that's this stupid, because this is below Politics 101. This is like intro to citizenship, 5th grade, and I don't want to do that. But then I thought about it. And I said, part of the issue is that this is the argument that a lot of ADOS are going to run into. This is probably the argument that you run into in your family. This is the argument that you run into with a coworker. So even though it's a rudimentary argument, it is, a lot of these arguments are arguments that you're going to run into in everyday life. And I said, it probably deserves being talked about for no other reason than that. But I'm going to put it also in the context of what a sophisticated argument looks like, as opposed to an unsophisticated argument, and like what you have to say against that. And then you have to move on, because these people will drive you absolutely, they'll drive you batty. So I don't have to put these in any particular order. I'm just going to show a few quotes and we're going to talk about them. I didn't highlight these quotes because, you know, the Wall Street Journal is funny. They want you to subscribe and you have to kind of move around in a way that you don't have to subscribe. But then if you try to highlight while you're doing that, then they catch you some kind of way. It's some kind of technology. They catch you. They get you out there. So these are highlighted only because, you know, I'll subscribe to a lot of stuff, but Wall Street Journal is not something that, this article wasn't worth me subscribing to anything. It wasn't worth the paper it was written on. So I want to start, you know, there's no one place to start. The whole thing is just, you know, I mean, so I'll just start where I start, because there's no rhyme or reason to this thing. It really don't matter. So let's just get into it, fam, shall we? Since we've been here. And this is what he says in terms of why he don't deserve reparations. Understand that nobody should ever say they don't deserve money. Like, if you're saying, like, I understand that reparations is more than that, but if you're saying that, I have to question how you understand Americanness. But let me just say this, like, in terms of, especially you're a member of a bottom caste group, but like, this is just really, it's something. He says, at the core of the reparations movement is a divisive and demeaning view of both races. It grants to the white race a wicked superiority, treating them as an oppressive people too powerful for black Americans to overcome. It brands blacks as hapless victims devoid of the ability which every other culture possesses to assimilate and progress. Neither label was earned. Neither label was earned. Now hear me when I say something, family. I want you to hear me when I say something about what is being said here. First of all, this. When you talk about, see, the thing is about nobody would say, when you talk about Japanese who were interned, or when you talk about who got reparations, or the Holocaust victims who got reparations, you would never say you want to paint yourself as hapless victims. Nobody would do that to them. Nobody would say to them, like, oh, why are you being such a victim? Why are you playing the victim game? That's not how it's treated. That's not how you are supposed to treat actual victims. So what happens with us is that people want to say that we're not victims at all. And like, this is like a game we're playing. Oh, get up off the floor. You ain't fall that hard. You know how, oh, you ain't that sick. Go to school. And it's, when you look at our oppression, I really want you to look at it, because it wasn't a moment in time. It wasn't something that happened over a few weeks. It wasn't something that happened over a few months or even a few years. It was something that lasted generations. It grew out of slavery, chattel slavery, and lasted generations. So you are saying you want to play the victims. It brands blacks as hapless victims. No. What it does is it robs us of actual wealth. And we already read about, you know, how when the government was kind of weaponizing race, when affirmative action was white, and we read that, and giving away, because the Great Depression and all, we read about, like, and even before that, the Homestead Act, how they were gifted this positionality. But when it comes time for us to say, yes, we need this positionality too, because of who we are and what happened to us, you want to say, oh, you're just acting, you're pretending to be hapless victims. You know, what would you do that for? Why would you do that? Why would you just act like this? Why would you do that? And it's whites. And see, this is the insanity of it. Nobody, see, go back here. I want you to look at exactly what he says in this part right here. How it views both races. This isn't about race as in terms of white people and black people. This is how you know the person that you're listening to is understanding from a rudimentary point and shouldn't be writing anything. You shouldn't be writing 6th grade papers. You shouldn't be writing 6th grade civics papers, because we're not talking about a person being white and this person being black. We're talking about institutionalized oppression. We're talking about structures. We're talking about systems. And if you don't know that all of those things that happened and all of what the government did in terms of redlining and in terms of convict leasing and all of that, if you don't understand how that built life today, see, the past is never the past. The past is always what we live on. And either we can thrive, or some of us thrive and some of us fall, but the past is never the past. The past is always alive in the present. So when you tell me that like this is about white people, you're making this about individuals. And this has never been about individuals. This is about groups. And this is about institutions, and this is about government, because it was the government who redlined us and wouldn't back our mortgages. That wasn't people. And even then, when white people tried to say, "Hey, I'm going to sell my home to a black person," I'm fine with that. Guess what the neighborhoods did? They did convict leasing, and said, "Well, we're going to make it to where anybody else who did that can't live in this subdivision. That's going to become part of it." I mean, they did covenant deeds, where they say anybody who does that can't live in this space. So you won't be a part of this community. This says that you can't sell to black people. You can't do it. And one man who tried to do it, you remember the code of law? He tried to do it and got ran out of the neighborhood, and everybody came down on his head. Right? So they made it where even if you wanted to be a good white person or a good white actor during that time, you were going to get destroyed too. Because they made, like Antonio Moore said, they made blackness a contamination. So we contaminated wealth. And they made it to where you couldn't even live near us because the government said you were going to contaminate wealth. And so the community was not going to be worth anything because black people were there. It doesn't matter whether black people were school teachers or principals or business or ran a grocery store. Blackness alone meant that you were going to contaminate that area, because there were areas where there were white people who were running around with switchblades or whatever the neighborhood was, sketchy neighborhoods. But their neighborhoods didn't get redlined. But there were black neighborhoods where the blacks were teachers and professionals, and their communities got redlined. So it had anything to do with class. It had everything to do with race. And that's why when we talk about reparations, what you have to do to fix us has to have everything to do with race. So let me go on to the next quote. And I just hate reading this stuff. You know, a bunch of Democratic hopefuls want to give me money. Because he's talking about Silas. Now, I want you to understand, he says, like Silas. Silas was his grandpappy. Now, understand, when people start talking about their grandpappy and their homespun wisdom, might have problems anyway. He says that his granddaddy was a businessman and went off to the West. First of all, I need to validate all of this. But we're not talking about individuals. We're not talking about that. Understand everything. There's nothing in here that deals, when he does get to data, all of his data is wrong. Like it's the most moronic thing in the world. But that's what we're rooted in. He's not rooted in it. He's talking about his granddaddy. His granddaddy's name is Silas. It's never mind that, like Silas, I am an entrepreneur who has lived the American dream, having received a world-class education, built businesses, raised a remarkable family, and unlike most white Americans, earned a Super Bowl ring. Now, let me say something. He's bragging about his Super Bowl ring. Let me say something, people. You built businesses. The businesses that you built, if you built them, I question that. But if you did, they were built off your Super Bowl ring. Because he was on the Oakland Raiders team. See, we overblow black celebrity way too much. You should not get this level of attention. And I'm not saying this, I want you to understand, I'm not saying this as a slight to people who play football. I understand that a lot of times you have limited options. And if football is your option, I understand you take a chance with it. But you don't get to come here and tell me or anybody else about politics or about legislation or what we should do because you made a bunch of money breaking your body for the masses. You breaking your body, your brains bumping up against your skull. You don't get to come here. That's not something to brag about. See, I'm not saying that you are not a superior athlete, but most athletes at that level are good in general. And like they have to compete to be the best of the best. That doesn't make you intellectually the best of the best. I don't even know who told you that you get to talk about this or that you get to have an opinion about this in the Wall Street Journal. I'm not saying you can't have an opinion about it at the barbershop. But even the barbershop should tell you don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea. You know, I don't see why anybody would have the Wall Street Journal. Like, that's why I didn't subscribe. I don't think any ADOS should be subscribed. You would never let Antonio and I come in and write an article that's rooted in data. But you let him come in and just say stuff about his grandpappy named Silas. Well, my grandpappy Silas, and I'm like Silas. And the other people, they just don't understand. And they just don't want to go to work like we do. And they want to blame the white man. Like, what are we doing? Now, here's another part that is worrisome. He says the reparations movement also reinforces a spiritual view of racial relationships that is antithetical to America's Judeo-Christian foundation. It defies the ideals of forgiveness and second chances and scorns individual accountability. Proponents of reparations act as though Black Americans are incapable of carrying their own burdens. These are not our burdens. We're not carrying the burdens. We're not carrying our own burdens. We're carrying the burdens of poverty and the wages of poverty that were built into slavery. Those are not our burdens. Those were burdens that were put on us, like the chains that were put on us. Those are the burdens that were put on us by systemic oppression in this country. That is not a burden that I bear. I did not put that on myself, or the accrued disadvantage that comes from it and is uproots out of it. That is not my burden. That should not be my burden. It's the burden we bear. It's the cost that we bear, but it is an unfair cost. How do you not know that? Now, if you want to talk about Christianity, there's some good conversations going on about Christians and what the Christians have done as well. White Christians, let's talk about you. A lot of good conversations going on about that. If you want to talk about how the country is founded on Judeo-Christianity and it goes against you don't even know about that. I don't even, like, you lie. I don't even know when the last time you probably picked up a verse. But whatever. It goes against forgiveness. Forgiveness, even in terms of the Bible, requires redress. It requires restorative justice. You don't know your Bible. You don't know your Christianity. You don't know a lot of things. You should just sit down somewhere and put the dunce hat on and live with it. But that's not my issue right now. I have to deal with the vapid ignorance that I had to just see. So let's go into this article for one quick second, since he's talking about the country so built on Christianity. Let's just go into that. In an admirable effort, and this is a quote from that Washington Post headline I just had up, in an admirable effort to reckon with its racial past, leaders at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary formed a commission to examine the school's racist founding and present their findings. The history, dating back to mid-19th century, was as honest as it was tragic. For instance, all 4 original founders of the seminary held slaves. And one donor who saved the seminary from financial ruin earned his wealth through convict leasing. Yet the report stops too soon. The report stopped too soon. See, this even your religion thing that you're throwing back to there, you little lost man who played football probably too long. Even your thing that you're throwing back to, it was built on racism. This country was built on the oppression of ADOS, from chattel slavery and all the accrued disadvantages, or what I call the re-enslavement and reimagining of different ways to oppress ADOS and live off ADOS, to live off that failure. How do we make money off ADOS failure? Well, we can't have them as slaves no more. We got to do convict leasing now. We got to do that. What we going to do? We got to do it. Now we got to do that. We don't have a choice. We don't have much of a choice. That's what they say. I tell you what we're going to do. We need all of these facilities to create gas or electric or whatever, but we're going to put that in the Black community. Right? And so we'll have all the fruits of all of this wonderful technology, but the technology has some really bad cancer causing stuff, but we'll give it to them. We'll give it to the Black people and see how that works out. See, it's all tied together, and your Christianity is no exception. White Christians are no exception. Like the Jamar Tisby is the one who wrote the book, and he had this to say: a A hero to many white Christians, evangelist George Whitefield enslaved people and actively lobbied for Georgia to become a slave state. Actively lobbied for Georgia to become a slave state. Georgia can never be a flourishing province unless Negroes are employed as slaves. That's a nice Christian that's a nice Christian way to think, ain't it? That's a nice. I mean, if we're gonna talk about it, let's talk about it. If you're gonna use it to like defend yourself, let's talk about it. What does it? What does the Christianity this country is founded on? Now let's talk about Let's talk about the bodies. Let's talk about the bodies of slaves that the Christianity is founded on. Let's talk about that. You don't want to have that conversation, do you? And you just want to talk about your grandpappy Silas. Now let's go back to it. We got to go back to it. We got to go back to it. Let's go back to him and all of his things he got going on. It is their divisive message that marks the black race as forever broken, as a people whose healing comes only through the guilt, pity, profits, and benevolence of the white race. This perception is playing out on our nation's college campuses, where young white Americans claim privilege due to their skin color. Now, understand one thing. The first thing that you really have to understand if you're watching this is that this person, or if you read this Wall Street Journal, you have to understand that the person writing this doesn't understand race, because race in America has never been about skin color, or hasn't been wholly about skin color. You could pass as white if you like bright, but like it has been about making a specific group a bottom caste. That's why now when you see people come in who are browner than us and you see them access whiteness, whether they be Italian or whether they be Indian American or whatever they may be, you understand that this is not about skin color. This is about something much, much deeper than skin color. And you have to understand, nobody is saying that we are forever broken. We're telling you what it takes to fix us. You just don't understand intergenerational wealth transfer. That's nothing that you've studied. Why is everybody, I guess I understand, but stop dragging these people and dusting them off and saying you gotta put something, you gotta get in here and get in this conversation. Stop dusting these people off. That's a problem. You just want to dust everybody off. And well, you got to come in here and you got to say something. Come on, get out here. Well, I was asleep. No, you can't be asleep. You can't be doing Fox News either. You got to go. You got to be out here. You got to be out here. I don't think people even understand that, like, before the Immigration Act of 65, it was just black and white people. So you could see who was black. But after that, even when the Irish came over, we're going to read about that, they were seen as kind of monkeys, right? Like when they came over here and immigrated. That was after 65. But understand what that means. Understand that somebody along the way, after immigrants started coming here in large numbers, somebody decided, we got to figure out who's going to be the bottom. And the bottom can't just be brown people. There's too many of them. Like, we got brown people coming from everywhere. The people who came from slaves, that specific line, that's who it's going to be. It's going to be them. And so you had some Irish come before 65. Listen, let me turn this off. But what we have is like a situation where it's about caste now. That's what you saw. That was a very good article. I can't remember where it was, but they were talking about projecting into the future, even back in the 60s, that if something didn't happen, we were going to be a bottom caste. That's what they said. And so what we're living that. I forget who was that. Was that part of that Moynihan? I really want to remember where that was. that the prediction was we were going to be a bottom caste. This was a caste, and we saw it when affirmative action was white too. The quote that this is going to become a caste, and that was Gunnar Myrdal's book, like in terms of the question of the Negro, that this group is going to be a bottom caste. If we don't do something, that's what they're going to be. So when you say now in 2019 that this is about skin color, then it means that you don't understand race and what accrued. See, you don't understand that we have inherited poverty while everybody else has inherited wealth. And even if you didn't inherit wealth, even if you are a poor white person, we know that black poverty isn't white poverty, but even if you are a poor white person, you still inherit whiteness, which in and of itself is an opportunity to be something other than what you are. There is no caste. So in 2019, to speak about race in terms of skin color is problematic, because we now don't even have, we're not even doing nationalistic politics now. Everybody is global. And you see global, when you look at global wealth, you see wealth everywhere. Indians, Mexicans, a whole lot of people with a bunch of money. You see billionaires. Billionaires aren't all white. So this whole thing, it's like you don't understand timing. You don't understand, like in 2019, we're not talking about skin color. And we're also talking about, remember the Indian man who was attacked by a police officer or whatever, and the government got on America, right? And said, like, this is a problem. These people have a homeland back in them that we don't have. This is our home. So that lets me know a lot about what you don't understand. But let's go to the next quote. As they repeat this mantra, they seem unaware that this perception was also shared by the 1960s Southern white supremacists of my youth. They accepted the theory that skin color alone is capable of making one race superior than the other. That through an irremovable white advantage. No, we're not saying it's irremovable. We're saying that, like, you should remove it. That through an irremovable white advantage with no additional effort, values, personal initiatives, honesty, or education, white Americans will succeed while black Americans will fail. At its very core, this represents condescending, evil racism. I mean, what can you say? What can you say? What can you say to that? No. I mean, the only thing you can say to that is absolutely not. Like, absolutely not. Like, you can't say on one hand, like, understand what he's saying. He's saying that it's racism to acknowledge racism. Understand, that's what he said. It's racism to acknowledge racism and its consequences. So if you acknowledge the racial wealth gap is indicative of systemic oppression over time, then you are racist. Understand what that means. Understand what that means and what that says about what he cannot and does not understand about race in America. We're talking about, and everybody agrees, like everybody agrees that the racial wealth gap because it's a group. It's not an individual. It's not an individual wealth gap. We're not talking about that. It's not like, well, there's a small subset of ADOS who aren't doing well, but everybody else is doing well, and we're trying to figure out what's going on with this small subset. No. We're talking about a whole race. That's indicative of positioning and indicative of the government intentionally putting impediments in the way of opportunity, because it's the whole group. And the racial wealth gap has persisted. The racial wealth gap has persisted over generations. So you have to understand, like, when you come in contact with somebody who gives you these arguments, you have to understand what they're saying doesn't make sense. Even the way he talks about, well, asking white people. No, we're asking government. Government isn't the white man. Government isn't white people. Government is government. It's your government and it's my government. Nobody should kind of bully you and make you feel bad in terms of making the government do what the government needs to do. Let's go to the next one. The journeys of these Americans to wealth and prominence vary, like those of their white counterparts. But many benefited from having ancestors who embraced the opportunities their country provided who left behind a legacy of proud, productive, patriotic, and successful families. Why should these people be given a handout? Oh, here we go. Why should these people be given a handout? Grandpa Silas never believed anyone owed him success. Why should I believe white America owes me anything? Well, there you go. It's not white America, it's your government. And all citizens should pay for it. I don't know exactly what is going on in your mind, that you believe things that aren't true, but I don't really understand how that is my problem. I mean, let me just say this proud kind of weird kind of, I don't know any way to put it, but this weird kind of, I don't know what it is. Conservative masculinity. Don't nobody owe me nothing. Nobody else says that. You're not going to find that among the Jewish community. You're not going to find that among the people who've been interned. You're not going to find that sentiment among anybody else except morons. Nobody says like, well, I'm not owed anything. I'll get it on my own. What are you proud? Just because you broke your body. I get it. You broke your body with these playing the football. But you just stroke a luck, man. You're not special. And I don't care about your uncle's grandpappy Silas. You're telling me that as a political thing. That's just stupid. This is our history in this country. There is a debt. And stop being such a turncoat. You gotta understand how bad a person you have to be to make money in the NFL and still decide, you know what, I made money, but I'm still gonna turn on my people. I'm still gonna turn on my people because, that's kind of what I got into when I was doing sports. It's kind of what I needed to be. And we gotta be able to recognize that a lot of these people need to be this. When they're doing sports, this is what they get trained to do. You gotta understand, when you do sports, there's a white coach yelling at you all the time like he's your daddy. So you look at that, you might begin to look at that white coach as daddy. And daddy told you nobody owe you nothing. And your coach daddy might told you you don't get nothing. You got to get everything. And you got to get out there and crush your body. And you got to do this and do that. That's your coach daddy. A lot of these people, we don't even understand it. Like, they're listening to that coach daddy. Forget Grandpappy Silas. You spend a lot of your life with high school coach and middle school. I don't know. And the coaches up under them and the coaches up under them, that's a problem. Because the problem is, I don't know how much you know. And I don't know how much you value the people that you've talked to. And I don't know how much you care about us or how much you care about, because you got to think what you might have to brainwash a football player into thinking and believing to make him get out there and crush his body all the time. It's all you. And if you play in your lane, I don't care whether you a linebacker or you a quarterback or you a wide receiver. If you play in your lane, that's kind of individual how you run your route, ain't it? So you begin to think of things in an individual frame. That's not how politics works. You don't even know how to differentiate the two. And I don't really trust people who have white men screaming at them all their life. Like, maybe that impacts you. Like, he been yelling at you, and that's how you respect him. You talk about Grandpappy Silas, but I think you respect him. I think there's some other men in your life that you respect as father. More than you respect him, and that's a problem. They say when a football player takes a hit, I don't know what this man played, I don't care. But they say when a football player takes a hit, it's like a car crash. So you were getting car crashed all the time, and you want to, like, on the field, and you want to tell me, like, about politics, like once you come off the field? No, you're not going to sell me them little stupid books about why I stand and I don't kneel. I don't understand why you shouldn't even be able to, your barber should be like, I ain't cutting your hair no more. I can't do nothing in this life, but I'm not cutting your hair no more. I'm not. I'm embarrassed. I'm not touching your head. I'm not lining you up. I'm not doing none of that. Because you have just embarrassed me with this stupid stuff you're saying. And there's a way to, I think people who argue against reparations are wrong. But I think there's a way to argue against it. You still be wrong. But there's a way to argue, like, in a fundamentally mature way that understands politics. You still be wrong. But there's a way to do it. He can't do anything, and he's talking. And then, let me just go to the last quote. It certainly does not represent Black America's potential, despite the Great Society's programs that introduce all sorts of perverse, dependency-inducing, and anti-family incentives into the Black community some 50 years ago. 40% of Black households today live in the middle-class American dream, according to the most recent census data, making between $35,000 and $99,000. $99,999 a year. Many rank among our nation's most powerful and prestigious. There are tens of thousands of Black Americans among our nation's top 1%. He just lied. What is he talking about? He's just talking. Like 40%? Are you serious? What are you talking? Like, here's Black life. Here we go. 50% of the bottom 50% of Black households worth less than $1. That's Black. Bottom 50% worth less than $1. And we live in the American dream. And look at, I want you to look at, did you say 100 right there? At the very end, you see that 75.4? What you're looking at is that the bulk of the wealth that is held in our community is held. Is this bulk that we're looking at, this big line at the top, that's mostly boomers who got advantages from affirmative action, all of that stuff. That's not the majority. Bottom 50. Like, understand something. A study just came out that said the top 10% has 74% of all the wealth. What do you think that means for like Black wealth? Like, just expand that out for yourself. You'll see this. But just think about what that means, and think about how profoundly inept you have to be to write something about how we're living a solidly middle-class life. How much you don't have to know. How much you don't see regular Black people. Just think about what that means to say something that stupid. We've had a number of studies come out as of late that tell us that, like, that's not the case. Oh no, we're not living that way. He still goes on the Wall Street Journal and writes there. I don't think he wrote. I think somebody wrote it for him. But he still goes on there and says what he said. And I'm tired of y'all letting people write stuff for y'all and y'all sign y'all name. I'm sick of ghostwriting. Ghostwriting is for the birds. I think if you're gonna write a book or article, you write it. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of a lot of stuff. But that's one of the things I'm tired of. 40%. We're solidly middle class. We have a lot of Black people that don't know Black people. A lot of ADOS people who are talking and getting their biscuits buttered, who haven't been around the rest of us in a very long time and don't know how we're living. Don't know what we go through. Don't know the study about, like, Black women who graduate college being negative in terms of wealth. Or Black women talking about being worth $5 in general. They don't know any of that. They just go pick up something and somebody writes something, they sign their name to it and go on because that's what I believe. So I want to kind of contextualize that in the sense of, I want to bring up something else about, like, a very serious kind of, to show that, like, because part of what people are trying to do is trying to make reparations into like a pipe dream. And so we have to talk about that. Let me just say this. 20 million Black families in total. The top 10% are the top 2 million old Black families. Most of our college grads are not in that group. So you're talking about boomer boule, basically. Or boomer, like, who got all the benefits of affirmative action. You know, age is not an indicator of effort. It's an indicator of timing. So it's not an indicator of these older people who have the bulk of our wealth actually have it because they did something different, which is what a lot of old people believe. That's why they sit around and tell you, well, your generation just got to know. Your generation just got to shut up. But, like, you know, and stop telling me what to do, because I'm part of the reason I'm here is because of what you didn't do. But you have to understand that's an indicator of timing and what timing wrought. You know? And that's kind of where we are. And I want to show you that that's a very immature, it's kind of an immature late 90s version of opposition to reparations before we had the data. right? So I want to show you a kind of a more sophisticated way that this conversation is had, and show you that it's actually possible. It's just not actually possible because people don't have the will to actually make this happen. But it is possible. And I just want to show you this. I just want to show you, this is the Truth Out article. We have the means to fund reparations. Where is the political will? At the international level, I just want to just give you some context. The Germany has paid over 89 billion in reparations to victims of the Holocaust. German officials continue to meet with groups of survivors and their advocates to revisit guidelines to ensure survivors receive benefits. Now, here's the thing somebody will say. Remember, they'll say, well, we're not survivors. Remember, when they got money for getting on the train, they sent them to the Nazis sent them to the gas chambers or whatever, and all that stuff. Wherever those trains, they were French. They said that the people who were the descendants of those Holocaust victims were seen as standing in the shoes. They were standing in the shoes of their ancestors, so they get it too. And we're standing in those shoes. But what this also shows is that nobody is saying, like, people also say, well, I had somebody say to me, well, Yvette, I think it's way too expensive to do reparations, so we can't do it. Well, the debt is the debt. But beyond that, this can be a multi-generational payoff. It doesn't have to be something that happens all at once this year or all at once next year. Understand that they've been doing this. They've been doing these payouts since the war for the Holocaust victims, and they've been doing these payouts for generations. You can't do it that way, but you got to start now. And it's not our fault. Like, people will say, well, you're not the one who picked the cop. And it's not just him. Bayard Rustin said that. MLK's advisor said the same thing. Well, I'm not the one who's old. I didn't pick anything. He said the same thing, but he didn't have access to the data. So I'll give him a little bit of a pass, but not much. But I think what you have to understand, and I say what you have to understand so much, but the most interesting aspect of this, for me at least, is that other countries and this country have done it, and done it well, in terms of reparations. The question then becomes, well, why can't we do it? And we can't do it because this country doesn't want to do it. We can't do it because our leaders don't want to do it. On both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. Democrats want to give everybody ice cream or whatever. Like, everybody gets money because everybody wants money. And they don't want to pay the debt. No, you owe this group a debt. You don't want to pay that debt, though. And the article, if you look at the title of the article, this is by Chuck Collins, is one of the authors, two authors. But he is, Chuck Collins is Oscar Mayer, the grandson of the Oscar Mayer empire, who founded Oscar Mayer. And Antonio Moore interviewed him a while back, so you can go and check that out on his channel. But this is somebody who understands wealth. It's not somebody that we're just talking to or whatever. This is somebody who came from, like, an empire of, like, a massive amount of wealth. So what I want to put up another quote just really, really quick, just so we understand that this is possible, and it has been possible. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan formally apologized for the U.S. internment camps of the Japanese American during World War II, and under the Civil Liberties Act, paid $20,000 in reparations each to over 800,000 victims. Over 1.1 billion was initially allocated, with additional appropriations later. Now, understand, they got paid for an internment. We have had slavery and redlining and convict leasing and lynch mobs who came and plundered, and you didn't redistribute wealth after the Civil War. You were supposed to. You gave it back to the Confederates. I can name 100 things. This one thing happened to them, atrocious as it was, but this is one thing that happened to them. We had a number of things happen to us, and we've got nothing. And they got $20,000 for the internment. And they got it. I mean, I don't understand. Let's go to the next one. In 1995, Florida provided restitution for a violent 1923 pogrom against black residents of Rosewood, Florida, which included compensation and university scholarships for Rosewood descendants. That's Rosewood. That's us. It can happen. It is possible. It's not some kind of weird long shot. It's not a handout. It's none of that. It's just a natural thing that happens when a theft has occurred. And when a country just knows that it is responsible for that theft, this is a natural outcome. Well, I got to pay for it. I did it. Let me go to one other thing really quick before I go to the next one. So what Collins and the co-writer advocate in this article is a reparations trust fund. And they want to take it from this. They say Senator Elizabeth Warren, for instance, has proposed a 2% annual tax on wealth over $50 million, with the rate rising to 3% on wealth over $1 billion. Such a proposal would generate an estimated $2.75 trillion. Right? That's like over 10 years. I didn't include it, but it's like over 10 years. So, okay. That's just one thing. No, that's just one thing to do. That's just one thing to get 2.75 trillion over 10 years. That's one idea. And we understand that those wealthy people are hoarding, because the reason that we don't have wealth as a group and we can't live American, even as a group of American people, is because we have a group of wealth hoarders up here who are hoarding not only the wealth but the opportunity. But we can take that back and we can use that for a reparations program. All of this is possible. So don't ask me where the money's coming from. A second idea. We propose hefty penalties on wealthy individuals and corporations that hide their wealth offshore or in complicated trusts to avoid taxation. Part of the austerity many of our communities face is the result of the estimated 8 to 10% of all global wealth that's now hidden offshore. So you're hiding the money. We can't tax the money when you're hiding the money. Like when you're hiding the money, we can't tax the money. So we can't tax the money for programs. So there has to be a fee, there has to be a fine, and we can use part of that for reparations. It is not hard. Getting to see, this is what I want to drive home. Getting to reparations is not hard. America just doesn't want to do it. It's not, well, where's the money going to come from? Or oh my God, are we going to have a 60% tax? I wouldn't care if you did. But no, we can tax the people up there who are hoarding everything anyway. And I would actually make people say, well, what if they decide they don't want to be citizens and then abdicate? I would say fine. If you want to be a citizen somewhere else, that's fine. But you can't come back here. I'm revoking your passport. You can't ever come back. You can't come home. So if you decide you want to abdicate your citizenship because taxes are high, or you're going to have a tax on the money you take offshore, or you're going to have a tax on your $1 billion income or your multi-million, okay, fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. But you can't come home. When you give me that passport, you don't get it back. I don't care how many kids you got here. I don't care if you want to come here to visit. You can never come home. I'd even make it to where you couldn't do business. Like, you can't do a lot. Like, there's a way to do this. Even people like, I'm not going to do it. I'm running. I'm leaving. Okay, you can do it. You can do it if you want to. You can't come home. Just stay over there. Wherever you decide you want to live, don't come home. It's not hard. Here's another idea in the same article. A third source of financing would be to redesign existing wealth building subsidies. The current U.S. tax code provides over $600 billion a year in tax subsidies, such as homeownership subsidies and retirement savings programs that are skewed dramatically to the wealthiest households. Shifting these expenditures towards wealth building programs for low wealth people, particularly those of color. Stop saying those of color. We just got to do DOS right now because it's a debt. We don't owe somebody a debt who just got here. So that's a problem I have. But would have a monumental impact. Yeah, it would. It absolutely would. Let's go to the next one. A tax on inheritance. A progressive tax on inheritances over 10 million, meanwhile, would also generate substantial revenue almost entirely from extremely wealthy families that have benefited from generations of white advantage and wealth building. Yeah, because your wealth is kind of stolen. It's kind of taken from our poverty, and yeah. So yeah, you got to yeah. That's what you got to do, because it's not your wealth anyway. It never should have been. It says, and let me read this real quick. Given this tax argument a context, the Revenue Act of 1934 raised income taxes on the wealthy and reduced them for lower income groups. It also raised estate taxes on the wealthy and closed corporate tax loopholes. The Revenue Act of 1935, sometimes called the Wealth Tax Act, raised taxes on the wealthy again. The top rate jumped from 59% on incomes over 1 million to 75% on incomes over 500,000. It placed graduated net income taxes on corporations and a tax on incorporated dividends, and it once again raised estate taxes. You can do it. We can do it. I don't know what we're thinking. And he goes on to talk about monuments, because you have to have this thing where you can't ever forget. The same thing everybody else does. You can't forget. We got to tear down these Confederates, and put up stuff that makes people understand who we are and the place we have in this country. But I think we have to understand that this is not hard. I think we have in our minds that this is a really hard thing to do. And that's why America hasn't done it. No, America hasn't done it because America doesn't want to do it. This is not hard. We can negotiate the terms. I'm all for always negotiating the terms. That has never been a problem for me. I will negotiate the terms all day. I will talk about the terms because I think this has to be multi-generational. I've said this before. Wealth is a part of it. I think lineage therapy is a part of it. I think there are a lot of components to what we need. And I think we can get in the room and have a conversation about that. I'm not saying, nobody has said that we have to have the trillions of dollars, whether it's 12 or 16 or whatever today. We can talk about how we distribute that money and over what time. But this idea that it can't happen when it's happened so many times before in America and elsewhere. And we're in the moment for that. I don't think people understand, like, this is the time. This is it. Like, you don't get a lot of other times. We're in that moment. And he goes on to talk about, like, commemorations, other things that need to happen, and other things. See, the thing is, let me tell you what's so important about this too. Like when he goes on to talk about Medicare for all, and he talks about postal banking in terms of people who don't have accounts, and you can bank. Like about 10 million U.S. families lack bank accounts. People of color are particularly vulnerable. I hate that term. Being unbanked as rural populations, the very young and elderly. The Postal Service is uniquely positioned to provide essential, low-cost financial services to these families. So what he's doing is something very interesting. What he's doing is something very interesting. He is, and this is something that, remember that I said this. I said that if you're on the left, you should include reparations as part of whatever programs you're offering, right? And it should be central. Not saying that you don't get the other stuff, but it can be a part of a realignment of America. So reparations is priority, but we're going to do some other stuff too. So he includes that and kind of folds it up together in a realignment of America. You can do that. But the funniest thing to me is that for the most part, that's not something that other people are thinking about. Right? Right? And it's just very interesting. So what I wanted to say honestly is that just so we understand this and we're okay and we understand what's going on, is that this is something that can happen. Don't let anybody kind of talk you out of this or tell you it's not possible or it's too late. Because even saying it's too late, is saying that it's kind of like somebody robs you, and then like you have a statute of limitations for the robbery, like 3 years. And somebody robs you, and then like you say, I'm trying to go to the police and report it, and they say no, and they stop you at the door. I'm trying to go report it. I gotta go report it. They say no. They stop you at the door. And so what happens is after time is that there's nothing to do. Like you didn't go report it because you couldn't. So you missed the statute of limitations because your oppressor was not letting you go report what needed to happen, or they decided that you weren't going to get what you were supposed to get. It's nothing that you've done wrong. We've been trying to get reparations for a long time. We missed the boat from the civil rights movement to now. We haven't done any real work, but that's not a long time. We have going way back. We've been asking for reparation. We haven't gotten it. It's not our fault that you didn't give it. That's not our fault. So let me just go. I wanna try something new at the end of this before we go to phones, because we're at the 56 minute mark. So I want to try something new. I'm not gonna do it all the time, but I want to do it sometimes because I think it's interesting. So what I want to do is the mailbag, and I'm just gonna take a few comments from the comment section of YouTube, because I'm not gonna take anybody's mail they send me. I'm not gonna do that. Because anonymity is important. So, this was one of the comments I thought was true. Like we let people who just arrived in the 20th century make us feel like visitors. That's true. That's true. That's what we did. Like we've been here, inspired the Statue of Liberty, and we let people who just got here was like, "What y'all doing? How come y'all ain't arrived?" And we started explaining ourselves to them. Well, we had some problems and stuff like that. All that kind of stuff. We had issues. We don't know. We had kind of, we had, no, why you, like, we have never taken the stance that, like, you don't even get to talk about me like that. Like, you don't even get to like, make me feel how I don't want to feel. Like, I'm going to tell you straightforward. No. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to me, and that it didn't happen to you, and what happened to you and how you got elevated at my expense is a problem. And I'm going to stare you straight face. You said, we never said that. And that's what we did. On the Ben Carson thing, somebody took issue with how, you remember we had the show, and it was a very contentious back and forth between him and the congresswoman. And somebody said, well, it must, let me read this. Let me bring this up bigger. Is this a different one? The blatant disrespect aimed at him by that woman on the dais. She would not have spoken in such a manner if he were white. Well, I can't say that. I don't know if that's true or not, because here's the issue. I can't say if that's true or not for one very specific reason. I've criticized Kamala Harris for very good reason, but I remember her grilling like Kavanaugh and all that stuff. So I don't know, like, and she hasn't been there long enough for me to know. I think we have to avoid jumping to these kinds of conclusions. Now, if somebody does something, and you can compare this to a white cabinet, if DeVoe come there or whatever, and she's real nice to her, and she was bad to Ben, then you can say that. But you can't say that if, like, what are you comparing that to, and why are you seeing yourself in Ben Carson? Like, why? This is probably, if you're a black man, why do you see yourself in him and see the disrespect, like, and feel like you're him? No, I think we've gotten too kind of into civility here, like, in the sense of when you go to Europe and you go to Britain and you see how they talk to each other, they go in. And let me go to the next one. Mailbag. I must say the reaction to callers that merely question our strategy shows our collective ego issues. The dude called in speaking about expecting the reaction of America's racists, and the chat room immediately attacked. How stupid are we not to even address the reality of our history in this moment, which is constantly not giving us our due? we didn't. That's not what we said. I don't think we understand strategy and tactics in terms of how to maneuver. That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing as trying to decide whether or not you're gonna fight. The reason everybody got on the gentleman who called the last time, because he was saying, well, should we fight, basically, because is it aspirational to believe they're gonna do something for us? He wasn't asking whether or not this was the right strategy. He was asking whether doing something or fighting for Americanness or full citizenship was a good idea. And the thing that we were telling him, given what you're born into, you don't have a choice of whether or not to fight. Deciding on what strategy works versus what strategy is not the same as deciding whether or not we fight for full citizenship in this country. That's what we were saying. That's not a strategic conversation. That's a conversation that you can't have. Whether or not you get to fight is not a conversation that you can afford to have. You can't have that conversation. You cannot have that conversation. You're here, you got to fight. You don't have a choice. Especially if you have kids. What you going to do? They going to starve out? What you going to let them do? So I think we have to understand what is strategy and what is not strategy. That's not strategy. That wasn't a strategic conversation. He didn't say, like, a strategic conversation would have been if he said, well, maybe we start with Congress and we fight Congress and don't deal with the candidates. I wouldn't have agreed, but that's a strategic conversation. You don't get to kind of like, oh God, you don't get to kind of like prognosticate and be like, well, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know, are we kind of doing this wrong? Stop sitting on your thumbs. You can't do that. That's not something, we don't have the luxury of doing that. That's what like people who are like solidly middle class, upper middle class, or wealthy get to do and decide what they're going to get involved in. When you're falling and falling fast, you don't have that luxury. That's kind of the luxury of maybe thinking that you're white. And so that's where we are. Anyway, fam, give me 1 second. I'm going to get the phone started. And I want to hear what you had to say about the article and what he thinks and what's going on in his mind. And I mean, you had to do, you get a pension from the Oakland Raiders, right? Do you have to go around and like collect butter biscuits in every city? These are all things I want the answer to. So we'll talk about that when we come back, fam. what's going on, fam? Somebody in the chat said something that's important, I think. And I just want to say something about it really quick while I was setting up. Somebody said in the chat, say, Yvette's frustrated tonight, I can tell. And yeah, I think I am. But let me tell you why. When one of the things I realized, when people get, when, I don't care whether it's the Wall Street Journal or whoever else, when somebody gets a stupid person to talk for you and to you, that's what they think of you. Let me say that again. When somebody gets a stupid person to talk to you or for you, that's what they think of you. So I see this kind of this dunce article as like an indication of what a segment of white America, kind of Wall Street Journal readers, really believe kind of us. In terms of like, it isn't even like a sophisticated black conservative. I don't know how many of them there are anymore. But it isn't even like a sophisticated black conservative with some kind of bona fides. It's not like even Colin Powell came and wrote like, well, no, we just got to do X, Y, and Z. And he had an alternative plan, but it wasn't reparations. You got this Oakland Raiders guy to come have a political conversation. And that says to me what you think of us. I said the same thing when Al Sharpton, when Obama picked Al Sharpton to be the surrogate for black America. I said, it's over. And people said, why do you think that? I said, he's shown us what he thinks of us by who he picked. I said, we have all kinds of academics. We have people who have actual achievements. You know, we have, if you want to talk to a journalist, we have actual journalists. The fact that you go and pick this man who has been thirsty for power for a while lets me know that like you're trying to manipulate him. I'm not even talking about what Al was trying to do or what his intentions were. I'm talking about what Obama was trying to do. Obama was trying to use Al Sharpton, and Al Sharpton kind of vying with Jesse Jackson. He was trying to use that to like, I'm going to make you the new guy, and you'll be so happy with being the new guy and having proximity to power that you won't really push me where you need to push me. And so when I see those kind of plays, I see what it means, and it gets on my nerves because we can't even really have a complicated and complex conversation because this Oakland Raiders guy is writing the Wall Street Journal and everybody's reading it. And like collectively, we just want to say he's a moron. Like nobody, well, he's writing moronic stuff, but like I've seen him on Fox News. I think I'm right. But anyway, fam, let's go to the phones. I'm going to go to the phones. I'm going to 562. 562, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
My name is George, and I'm calling from Long Beach, California. I wanted to say thank you for your show on Monday. I'm a disabled American veteran. I started a veterans webpage. And when you went in on the statistics, we cover veterans from Crispus Attucks all the way through modern day. One of our founders is one of the first lady women in Vietnam.
Okay.
So she's a black woman.
Okay.
But she's from the island. But we deal with the minority issues for veterans. And what I wanted to say, the statistics that you brought out for me on Monday were eye-opening because it really stands out when you serve this country and you give something and you find out you really don't get back what you've given in. And oftentimes, when you look on the backside of it, like me, after you served some 30 years later, you're broken up, you're hurt, you're having problems, your kids have problems because you've been exposed to chemical agents. They don't take this into consideration. And when you go through it in the workplace, in my lifetime, I've been fired for being a disabled veteran from a major airline. So when I went to try to go get another airline job, I had to tell the truth. That's called compelled self-publication, where you tell the truth. If you tell the truth, you look like a troublemaker. If you tell the truth, they think you're a liar. So the end result of it is you don't get the job either way. But the bottom line is that as a veteran, I just wanted to say thank you because I was unaware of statistics, and I did post it on our website to put these facts out there for consideration. For the fact of the matter that even as you were teaching, I know about the Statue of Liberty standing on chains and what she did mean. I'm from New Jersey, but the bottom line is not many people outside of New Jersey know that information. Not many people in New Jersey know that information. So you have to constantly educate, and I'm so glad to see you doing that in the sight of this ignorant statement that you're reading in the Wall Street Journal. It is something that defies any sense of intelligence.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you're here to break it down, to hand down the apologetics to the community so that when, like you said, when they go to face their family, that they'll be able to stand up and give an intelligent argument to send them away with something to think about. And that's what I like about you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate
it. And that's all I have to say.
I appreciate
Thank you
it.
very
Thank you,
much.
fam. I appreciate it. I really appreciate that. You know, and you know, because you have to have something, but y'all gotta know when to walk away too, because you gotta hit them with it. You gotta hit them with it. And you gotta do what you gotta do. But you gonna have to you gonna have to hit them with it. And sometimes you gotta walk off because people will drive you crazy. Well, I knew a man one time. I knew a man, and he drove a Chevrolet, and he had, I'm gonna tell you, he had $400,000 in his bank account. He was a black man, so I know it exists. Did you see his bank account? Listen, no, but the man had stuff. The man had a mink coat, Yvette. He had a mink coat and velvety slippers. What do you mean? And he had a cane like the little Peanut Man. Do you see the Peanut Man, the little Mr. Peanut? He had one of them canes, and it was traced in gold. You gonna tell me that man didn't have money? That's why I don't like to go to barbecues no more, because everybody come to me saying something stupid about some little man they knew, and they know he had money. The man that never did nothing for them or gave them nothing, but somehow, because he had a little velvety slippers or something, and he was rumored to have. If you don't go off, and even that would be an aberration. That wouldn't be like some kind of like, I know this for sure. What are you talking? Oh, velvety. Yeah, he had diamonds too. That's cubic zirconia. Anyway, I'm going to 301 oh, I got two 301s. 30131. I'm coming to you. 30131. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Evening, Yvette. How you doing? This is Marshall. I'm calling from the DMV, right outside DC. How are you, sister?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm all right. I'm not going to be long, but tonight, well, first of all, I want to thank you for the suggestion of the book club. That book, How the Irish Became White, is going to be something that, when we went over the last book, How Affirmative Action Became White, that is a great follow-up to other than, I'm not going to go deep into it, but I've read it before, and I'm going to be happy to reread it again for the book club. Real quick, with this particular article, and you mentioned it right before you went to the phones, it kind of feeds into the caller that we had on Memorial Day, who, you know, felt as though that, you know, reparations and the fight for it was really not something that either he wanted to get behind or like, is it really worth it? You have your boomers and you have people from a certain generation who feel as though that even if it's a fight to take up, they don't see themselves in it. And so this is becoming more of people who are just like, look, we know the hell that we've gone through and we know what has happened to us, but really, are we going to get this type of justice from the same people and the same government and the same system that put us in this system? And so it's not a fight to go up against. And you have one scale, and then you have the others who are just like, you're crazy. You know, it's like, it sounds good on paper, and from an academic standpoint, they understand it, but it's just not something that you're fighting for. We just have to, as you said, you just have to basically do what the Bible says. You know, present it to the people, and if they don't believe it, you got to shake off your sandals and keep on walking.
He said, shake off your sandals. You said, shake off your sandals?
I think it's sandals. Forgive me, I may not know the scripture right, but shake the dust off, shake the sand off, and keep walking. You know, I guess that's what it is. I'm sorry, I'm messing it up. But,
no, that's fine. I thought that was funny.
Like I say, to the whole Breaking Brown family, you know, we can't stop, even though you pinpointed this horrible article tonight. Really, I look at this more as a generational thing. And when you have a bunch of people going, what I did, and the people around me, what they've done, and how you can do it, you're basically just talking to people that can't see the forest through the trees. And after a while, you'll learn right away that these are people who are not involved, necessarily not so much in politics, but not involved in the information of how to get there.
Yeah.
And all I can say, sister, is to just keep going. And if I could quickly say, for the ADOS area, let's follow a shout out to all the people in Atlanta who had the ADOS meetup. We need to follow their example. ADOS and the DMV, we need to get together and do it. And ADOS all across the country, we should start having meetups in our towns and areas. And we can't let all the work be done by Yvette and Tone and Dr. Darity and a few others. We need to put our boots on the ground and make it work for the ADOS and the DMV. Hey, we're right here next to Congress, next to the Senate. Let's get it done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can do it in boots or sandals, bro. I appreciate you. Thank you. I appreciate you. And listen,
thank you.
And I'm not saying you're wrong. It was just funny, the context of it, the context of what we've been saying. I'm not saying you're wrong at all, that he was wrong at all. I'm just saying that the context of the conversation, I have no problem with dusting off your feet, because I know that's somewhere in the Bible, somewhere. What is that, like Revelation? I know it's in there, but I'm just saying that it was funny in the context. As long as you ain't dusting off your little velvety slippers. And everybody got velvety slippers, but I'm just saying, like, that don't mean wealth. I don't know what we got in there. I saw he had some Givenchy shoes. I don't even know how to pronounce that, but whatever. People just get caught up. That don't mean nothing. Stop looking at these little things. Black people are real good for having an icing on the cake, no cake. That's gonna give you problems in your stomach, digestive issues. I'm going to 301. 301. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
My name is Morgan, and I'm calling from Staten Island, New York, by way of Prince George's County, Maryland.
Okay.
Okay, I say that for a particular reason.
Okay.
Because even though you have 301 here and it says Maryland, I live in Staten Island for the past 5 years, but New York City for the past 20 years. And I used to think, coming from Prince George's County, I used to think there was something wrong with me because I was not expressing the material wealth that my mother had. My mother married and had a stepfather, but I thought there was something wrong with me. I was still poor with a master's degree. I couldn't figure it. I couldn't figure it out. And when I heard you, Antonio, and Irony speak, and I said, all of this is making sense because I'm a Generation Xer. I'm 52 years old. So my parents are baby boomers. And when I try to relay the information to them, they never come back with me with data or information because they don't have it, and I understand that. But when I show them the data and give them the information and tell them what the solution is, they go immediately to some type of financial literacy thing and say, okay, yeah, that's nice. Where am I going to get the capital for that? There's never an answer to that. But the reason why I'm saying this is that when I said I thought there was something wrong with me, I was at a point where I was ready to commit suicide. Just really put it out there. Because I couldn't support myself. And this mental thing that happens to me only got alleviated through you, Antonio, and Irony. And I want to thank you for that. I honestly want to thank you for that. You did more than save a life. You saved my mind to a degree as well. And I want to thank you for that. What you're doing is more than what I think we see. It's more than that. You have influenced and ignited a spirit in me that now makes me not be a fighter. I'm not going to be a fighter. I'm going to be a warrior. See, the difference between a fighter and a warrior is that a warrior fights for the people. A fighter fights for himself. I can't afford to just be focused on myself or my family. I got to do this for my people. If this does not get done for the people, for our people, we are being erased. And we're at the erasure point now. You know, we're not even human to the United States of America. We are seeing through the lens of a resource. And resources us to be used, exploited, discarded, replaced, and then erased.
Sure.
Our replacements are already here in immigrants. They're here. The replacements are here. Now what they got to do is erase us. And I'm not going to let my people be erased without taking an entire chunk of you with us to the point where you will not be able to have this country the way it is. There got to be some consequences now. And there's going to be, even Martin Luther King said, there is going to come a point where blood is going to have to be shed. I don't want that, but I see that the resistance to us being elevated to the human status, just a human status.
I mean, I don't want to really get. I hear you. I hear what you're saying, but I don't really want to get into that. Because let me tell you, the problem, we're a very minority, and I don't think people understand like the consequences. But I especially wouldn't want to talk about any of that on YouTube. But I don't advocate any kind of violence. I just want to put that out there. YouTube and everybody listening, we're a political organization. But I don't think I think there are significant challenges to like any kind of revolution. Like we talk about even the riots of the 60s and stuff like that. Like what we have to really understand is that this is a different era. They're taping all your calls. Like the NSA, if you all haven't watched that Frontline documentary about the recording of the...
Hold on.
You screwed.
Let me one thing.
Okay.
When I said blood, I didn't mean blood as in violent blood.
Okay.
I mean, we are going to be mowed down.
Okay. Oh yeah.
They're gonna mow us down.
No, I think they're just gonna put us in cages. I don't think it's just gonna. I think we're gonna get to a point where it's not just gonna be like we've had black men in cages. I think we're gonna get to a point where they're gonna take us all off the board. Like it's not gonna be just black men. Like some black women are gonna get to be like the beacon to show like, oh, you can do it too. And then the rest of us are just gonna be. I think they're gonna warehouse prisons. Like they're gonna increase the warehouse. It's not just gonna be like men. I think they're gonna what I call is like finding a way to take us off the board. So and there's a lot of ways to hit that reset button that we talked about. But I think they reinvent that. I think prison for black males was part of it. I think there's another part of it, and they could just starve us out. Like we've talked about before. You see the homelessness in LA, and you think like starving us out could be a part of that too. Like we just get starved out. Like you don't have food no more. You can't eat no more. What you gonna do?
Right. Well, that's the end of my call, and I just want to give you that thank you and that love. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, fam.
I'm here today, and I'm not going nowhere. I'm here today, and I want to thank you, Antonio, and Ira before that.
Hey, we love you, man, and we happy you here.
Bye-bye.
All right. I mean, listen. The funniest thing, I don't really delve into a lot of the emails and stuff I get. But that's not. I've gotten a few emails like that. Like, I really, and I want to thank the brother for calling and being honest and open about what he went through. But I've gotten a few emails from ADOS people who have been suicidal or on the verge of suicide, and they tell me a lot of the same things. That what the burden that they had was the belief that they were supposed to be more. And so they were walking around with this belief that I am a failure. Like I am a failure because I didn't do what I was supposed to do, or I didn't achieve. And like that's a really big burden. That's a really big burden to walk around to. And the thing with us, like it's a lie. Like it's a total lie. But we have kind of walked around with that lie, and that lie that like, and then people will tell you stuff. You'll have people tell you stuff like, oh, well, you should have just done better. Or you should have done what I did. And if you don't know better, then you just begin to believe like, well, maybe I am the problem. Maybe the problem isn't anybody else. Maybe the problem is me. Maybe the problem is that I haven't done what I need to do. And I've had a few people reach out to me and say, you help me understand that like the problem isn't me. The problem is America. And the problem is everything that I have lived through and my people have lived through that came and how we got here. And so I appreciate that, and I appreciate being able to do that, because it's not just one person. It's really not just one person. I appreciate that brother calling, but this thing, if you don't really understand what America is and what America has wrought, this will lead you down a road of self-blame and mental health problems, because you don't understand and you think that you yourself, you had agency and you missed out on your purpose in life because of something that you could have done. And that is a spiral downhill when you do that. And I want to thank the brother for calling in. Okay, I'm going now to 310. What's your name? Where you calling from? I know who this is. What's up?
This sounds. I really wasn't gonna call in, but I just wanted to tell that brother I appreciate his testimony. You know, it takes a lot to call in, and even if it's anonymous, and just tell yourself that was possible. You know, I guess when I started doing my project, it was honestly a personal one because it wasn't that I felt what he felt, because I've kind of always been aware that my mother was working poor, but I wanted to understand the context of how bad it was. And I think what everybody has to understand is that this is a moving ball in the sense that it's not getting better, it's getting worse because of policy. You know, and we've talked about it, how the growing number of white millionaires and how then they flood the system with that new money, and we compete against that money. And I think, you know, I put up a tweet earlier this week, and it gives that thing context. And sometimes it's interesting for me because I'm outside of this world that people have chosen to be in. I respect and understand it because they felt the pressure to, have a family, do the things that are American, because we live in America. But they had no tools. And what I said in this tweet, I'm actually pulling it up.
Which one?
Excuse me. As I look for, you don't have to.
Okay.
This is the one where I just talked about.
Okay.
One of the issues for blacks in the early 40s, as they inherited lifetimes of debt from slavery and Jim Crow. Again, one of the issues for blacks in their early 40s is they inherited lifetimes of debt from slavery and Jim Crow and told their kids they can give them the world and take care of them forever. Now that child is 19 and demanding a world that comes from the advantages of whiteness. So it kind of reminds me of the woman from Spelman that got there and didn't, she kind of, it's not just that she was unorganized and she didn't have money in a certain account. She literally was in debt. And she just was gonna fill out the paper and make it for her baby, I guess, or whatever she told herself. And I have to wonder whether one of the issues we have is this Dave Ramsey financial literacy. There's got to be a middle ground between Boyce and Yvette that makes it all make sense for us. No, Boyce Watkins makes no sense. There is no $1 million class that's gonna bounce you as a black person into the white $1 million class. The way they're getting there now is stocks and assets that don't even include houses. The only reason we got there is because of timing, and our houses appreciate. And I don't think that everybody understands that and what that means going forward, because it goes against everything you built yourself as. And part of the problem right now is when you look over at the Wall Street Journal, they need you to believe that to continue doing whatever they do. I believe this article it should lead black people to basically almost boycott the Wall Street Journal because it's that disrespectful that they publish that. If you go to the Wall Street Journal with a sound reparations article, you can't get past the doorway with their conservative editors. But at the same time, they'll publish this nonsense because it makes their whole narrative around do-for-self bootstrapperism make sense despite the data. The data the man presented was income. Who uses income to measure wealth during wealth classification? That's stupid. Let me say it again. The data the guy used in the middle was income. That's the flow of wealth. That's not the measure of wealth, though. And so, what you see is he don't even know the difference. Because just because you make $110,000, which is top 10 to 12% for black folks, if you got student debt, if you got credit card debt, because that's what it took for you to get there, the income don't matter. But he don't know that. And for me, in a lot of ways, I think that what we're seeing is that media is trying to sell us a message. And none of those messages actually make sense. Can you pull up that Grapevine article? Because I think it's important. The recent show Yvette did on Grapevine, you had them trying to say, I guess somebody reached out, they were going to cover Adolf, and it's kind of like, don't cover Adolf is what we said. But then the day after, they had this Twitter back and forth, and one of the creators of Grapevine, this woman here, says, what's broke to you? Because most black people in America are middle class and up. There are enough of us to pull the minority out of poverty, in my opinion. See, we don't do opinions here. You got the blue chart with the lines. What we do is facts. This is the kid here. This kid, understand she was referencing my chart that was shown at the Federal Reserve based on the data from the most recent survey of consumer finances. And she can source it by looking at the micro data. I'm not giving no articles out. So, we'll read this, looking at this chart. Half of our race has no wealth. Half of our race. How do you say this when half of the race is worth less than $1? Well, you say it because you don't know nothing. So how are you trying to do a show? You need to be in the audience. I mean, with a book and everything in the back until you learn. Because the 10% that has the wealth is all old boomers, and it didn't come from, now let's tie this to the Wall Street Journal, effort. It came from timing. These people were just timed right after the civil rights. It's interesting to hear the man talk before me, because he only 4 years younger than my mama would be, I should say. Understand that, like it's just a trick, because in some ways we don't understand the key age to be, if you're black, to have a shot, because tons of black boomers don't have wealth either. But the key to have a shot needs to be about 64, 65 right now, all the way up to like 77. That's that sweet spot. You went to a factory, worked consistently, they paid you a pension, it was unionization, you slid in the back door, didn't do no politics, but did just enough where you was in the union. You didn't want to make your name known, because white people going to kind of treat you bad, and you just walked around and did a slide. And that's what happened. But like, we come to the critical point between these things, and what we end up with, can you pull up the other image if you have it? It ties to this one, which is, what we end up with is this idea that we can project Black America in a way that never happened. I read that it came on my Twitter thread, this woman here, I believe she's Nigerian, Ijoma, and if you scroll down some, what you'll see is this is a black little boy looking at her. This is ego personified. I think you have to pull it up some for them to see the bottom of it. This pic is a reminder to me of why I do the work that I do. I want to be the image that black kids see and say that they can be a PhD too. How? How can you not be Adolf and tell us that in America, you're going to be the image of what we need to do to be anything in this nation? It makes no sense. This is Obama. This is the danger of not recognizing lineage. Like I said in the tweet, this is the lineage wealth gap. It was the racial wealth gap before they had mass immigration. Now it's the lineage wealth gap. When you come from an elite Nigerian background, you can't tell no black kid that come from my background nothing. Zero. I don't care if you even came up in the same neighborhood. You can't tell me nothing about what it takes to get a PhD. We wouldn't allow this from an Indian. We wouldn't allow this from an Asian. We wouldn't allow this from any other group. But somehow, because these people look kind of like us, we say this is an okay message. And it all ties back. Nobody knows the numbers and nobody knows the history. And we allowed all these people to mask bootstrapperism and activism. All of that is the same thing. I'll just leave it at that.
Appreciate it, Tom. As usual, appreciate it. Yeah. Bootstrapperism. You can't make me a millionaire if you haven't made yourself one. I don't know. You got to make yourself one first. I'm going to 201. I'm coming to you. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Oh, Yvette, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
How you guys doing? Man, it's just a blessing just to get through these guys. I just want to keep this kind of concise. And I want the Breaking Brown family to please listen. I was just at a graduation here at Rutgers University Thursday. And this was at the Performing Arts Center. And at that graduation, because my wife, she just received her master's degree. Now, I'm at the graduation, and I'm looking at the audience. Prior to us going to our seating, I'm looking around, and I'm saying, is this the United Nations or is this America? Because I'm saying, I don't see no ADOS. I've seen hordes of Asians, hordes of East Indians from India, Pakistanians, Bangladeshians. And when the commencement
of the service proceeded, the people who were kind of giving it, they were, Asian, they were Indian, and then they proceeded to read off the names of those who were receiving the degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to see if, we have any ADOS. This is Rutgers University. I mean, this university was built by slaves. So I'm saying to myself, okay, we're halfway through the commencement. They might have several hundred they called out. I might have heard maybe one or two ADOS names. Now, some of the blacks that were there, they were either African or from wherever they may have been from, or wherever they came from. And I had to say to my wife after the graduation, I said, honey, are you aware of what I've been talking about all this time for the last few years? That we're being displaced, even in our universities.
Mm.
So I'm like, we do not stand a chance. ADOS, our brothers and sisters, do not stand a chance if we're not made whole, and if this government do not pay what is owed to us. And I just want to say one more thing too. See, I work in the tech sector. I work for a Fortune, let's say, 25 company. I'm not saying they're a top 25 company. I work in IT. Now I'm trying to tell you, and this is coming from someone I've been doing IT for 22 years. We have a lack of presence of brothers and sisters that are ADOS in the IT sector. We will not be able to make it in the future if we do not acknowledge what is being done to us in regarding to the development of our education in a system that has failed us completely. And in this IT sector, in this business, there's nothing but Indians, Africans, and a small amount of ADOS, very small, with minimum positions. And I just want to go to say is, we are in such a dire situation right now. I'm 57 years old. I guess I'm considered a Gen X or whatever, but I've been on that red, black, and green in regarding not Pan-African, but for the struggle of my brothers and sisters that come from the descendants of slaves here in America. Mm-hmm. I've been fighting this since I dropped out of Howard University, electrical engineering in 81, fighting just like you. Mm. So what I'm getting at to say to all my brothers and sisters that's kind of on the fence with this reparation thing, you better wake up, because you will be amongst the extinct and 50 years black. We will not have a say. We will not have a presence, and we will be nothing but they may have to open up a new museum of the black that used to be, the African American that used to be. And you can open up that museum right next to the one by that clown museum that they got in D.C. But you and Tone keep doing that work. I'm here in Jersey, and I'm fighting all day, every day, and I am having to put on my gloves and knock these ignorant jokers with some knowledge, because it's just pathetic how far gone we are in regarding to one to accept the truth that is visible in your face. Peace to my brothers and sisters.
Thank you,
in regards to ADOS, Breaking Brown.
I appreciate
you guys take care.
You too. You too. I appreciate the call. I appreciate the call from somebody who was there, actually watching the graduation and saw it go down. I don't think we understand. Like, they're in-gaming us. In the sense of, they understand that, like, you just can't get rid of us. Like, you just can't get rid of black and brown people. So they just bling black and brown people. So if we go off, nobody really understands. Nobody really cares. We still got black and brown people. They're just not y'all. And white people don't know the difference no way. So, like, what does it matter? Like, they don't know the difference anyway. Right? So what does it matter? So this is end game. This is just what it is. So I'm going to 503. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, this is Quentin calling from the Pacific Northwest. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. I just want to say thank you for having the conversation, as you always do, you and Tone. I appreciate everybody who called in before me, and just to kind of, I'm going to make this real concise.
Okay.
Just to piggyback off of what the previous caller said, I went to a thing in my town called Black Discussions Night, and it was packed in there. And I told the group, ADOS people. I said, if we don't get on the reparations bandwagon and we don't define ourselves, we're going to slowly but surely be in the history books just as a emblem of history, and another group will inherit our legacy and engage in legacy theft. And the table
legacy
just
theft. Wait a minute. Say that
roared.
again. Say that one more time. Say that one more
Legacy
time.
theft.
You got to drop the
Legacy theft.
legacy theft. There's another. So what basically
Yeah.
you're saying? Another community will inherit what we built, and so we build all this stuff up.
And I think they're going to try and give it to the Hispanics more than anybody else, Latinos. But that's another conversation. But they acted like I was somebody from another planet.
Yep.
And I just kept after that happened, I just got quiet because the foolishness at the table. So I let it go. But I'm supposed to be attending a discussion next month, another Black discussion next month. And there are some things that I find problematic in how it's framed. I have, over the last couple of weeks, for some odd and strange reason, I think they're in Cobra supporters. They're older Black people, and one of the criticisms that they lob at you and ADOS, they say that you are intentionally opening up reparations to white people in America by using the term American first. And my response is always, do you know the difference between indentured servitude and slavery? That's one of the things that I have to say, but I find it to just be so ignorant Yvette is trying to open up.
Let me just say something. I'm gonna let you finish. Let me just say something. That's probably the most profoundly ignorant thing I've ever heard. Just to say that we are American. We are American. ADOS people are American. Like, to say that how in the world do you get yourself, like, these people, how do you get yourself to say that, like, reparations are for white people because we say that we're American? No, our claim, our claim is American. Like, our claim is here. That's what American is. We are American. This is where our claim is. What's wrong with y'all? Like, people can't be this slow. I don't believe nobody's this slow. But go on, let me let you finish, Carl.
Yeah, well, they're saying that by using the American instead of putting some kind of African demarcation in there, that you're opening it up to white people because they'll trace their ancestry back and find whatever and I told them about Sandy Darity and how they will look at the census tracts and old paperwork to see, who has been identifying, because we have Black people who are passing for white in this country as well.
Yeah, and it says American descendants of slavery, and there's a way. Antonio's going to talk about this at some point, but he has put another notch in it to try to make it even more specific. But it's about the descendants of that slavery and the accrued disadvantage. We have been more specific than any group about specificity, whereas in Cobra is trying to give it to all African people everywhere. That's why you can't ever get nowhere, because it's not a Pan-Africanist idea. There's no claim against whiteness. There's only a claim against America. American descendants of slavery have a claim against America. We don't have a claim against white people around the globe. This is not about. You cannot use American reparations to liberate everybody. Just like CARICOM, which is the Caribbean reparations claim, is not trying to liberate everybody. It's about Caribbean descendants of slavery. Like, this is just like, you got to be scraping at the bottom of the barrel to try to make this ridiculous argument. But I'll let you finish up, man.
Yeah, and the conversation is being held at a Jamaican restaurant, and then they have framed it. They said, and one of the questions they've asked is, does ADOS open up reparations to white people? So there are so many things that I kind of find problematic. I kind of find myself going into the lion's den. We'll see. I'm just going to leave it open for possibility and see how things go. It's supposed to be a nice turnout, so we'll see. But I wanted to touch on the article that you pulled from tonight. The author forgot to mention the biblical and Christian concepts of redemption and atonement. The people involved in the Charleston massacre, their family members, they instantly forgave the shooter, Dylan Roof. When Black churches were being burned down, I think it was a couple of years ago, Black Christians were instantly forgiving the perpetrators, and that makes the perpetrators feel like they can do whatever they want and there won't be any sort of consequence. So if he's going to pull from the Bible or from Christianity, he should really emphasize redemption and atonement as well, because we can't move forward without either of those two things.
I appreciate it, Carl.
And then also just yeah, and I just want real quick. I'm involved in my county and state Democratic Party, and I posted the picture of Bernie that's circulating on the internet with him holding up a chicken leg. I reposted it criticizing him for thinking attending black events and posing with black folks takes the place of a robust black agenda. And all the white leftists and burners, they got on my thread and argued fiercely against reparations. So I'm kind of seeing it up close and personal that many white leftists are conservative when it comes to matters of race.
They are, yeah. They want to. They'll end ICE and end profit, but when you say reparations, all of a sudden they become very conservative. Well, hold on, we can't do that. Hold on a minute. But let me just say one thing. I don't know where that Bernie chicken leg thing came from, but let me just say I blame us partly for that. Like, we complained about Bernie not going to the kitchen and tasting our pound cake and chicken salad, and so he don't want to do that no more. Like, he wants to like actually be involved now because you told him you want him to taste your food. I don't care like whether he tastes my food or not. So, but I understand what you're saying, Carl. I'm gonna let you go, but I appreciate you calling in. Part of the problem is just like we focus on things that don't matter. So then the candidates will go back and do stuff that don't matter. Now I don't know where the photo came from, but like people go back and like, well, you know, Bernie. Remember that article? I read from that article a while ago, but like Bernie didn't come to the kitchen, and we made all of this. We made all of this chicken salad for him, and we made turnip greens and cornbread. He ain't come eat none, and we made that an issue. So like what happens is candidates begin to think how affectionate they are with you is the issue, and how hospitable they are with you. And that's not it. It's about an agenda, and we have to stay focused on what that agenda looks like. I don't care. If you don't come to the kitchen, I'm going to take the food home. This is what I don't care. I'm going to take the food home. I'm going to load it up, put it in the back of my car, and I'm going to take food home and my food for a while. That's not really my issue. I'll feed a bunch of people. I hope a bunch of people forget about the kitchen and start talking. Because I'm going to dip out, look both ways, and I'm going to take it to the car. Like, I care about the agenda. I don't care about the rest of that stuff. And I think, you know, it's funny to me, the groups that are getting in the way of this reparations debate, talking about, oh, it's about white people. Well, see, you're kind of showing me in a way and making me believe that something else is going on here. Because why would you keep stumbling in the way of something? Like, I've never seen some of these groups get as active as they have been. One group didn't even have a Twitter until we started. I don't think you care about reparations as much as you care about leading the reparations debate. You don't care if we never get it, I think you'll be fine. You just want to be the voice of it. And that's not okay. That's just not okay. I'm going to 414. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hello?
What's going on, 414?
Hey, Yvette. It's Quentin, and I'm calling from Milwaukee.
What's going on?
Okay, so I was trying to figure out the person who, made like the call. I mean, not the call, but the article. Do you know the author's name?
Burgess or something. It's an old time name. Hold on. Yeah. The football player. What's his name? I can bring up his tweet. Burgess Owens.
Okay, I thought it was Jason. I thought it was Jason Wiley again because I'm like.
I did too until I read it. I did too. I did too.
Huh?
I thought it was too until I read it. I thought it was him too.
I thought it was him because you remember last year when I exposed him because of the situation that happened with his wife. But okay, so anyway, to speak to the whole terms of thing, I'm gonna just be like brutally honest about something, and it relates basically to ADOS people. Okay, so for me, I tell people all the time, I currently work at a hospital. Mind you, it's a multi-billion-dollar hospital. Most of the people here that's doing janitorial work is Black Americans. Now, I always tell people, it's interesting because we always hear that constant, like, what is it? The constant, the only people that's willing to clean toilets is the Mexicans and all of that. But I beg to differ because if you come here, you will see that that's absolutely not the case.
Well, we've always done that. Hold on. Let me just say one thing, Carl, before you go on. Black women used to be the maids in this country. Black men were the butlers and picked oranges and did all that stuff. Before immigrants got here, we did all that stuff. So that is ridiculous. Like, on his face, it's ridiculous to say that, like, we won't clean. Who you think used to be doing all the cleaning? Who do you think cleaned your house and nursed your babies? Like, that was black women. Like, so to say that we don't do what we used to do.
I'm here to see you over here.
I'm on the phone real quick. I'm gonna talk with you though. No, you good. No, I'm at work right now currently. So,
well, you gonna have to do your job. Don't get fired. Go do your job. We're gonna let you go.
No, I just wanted to finish by saying hello.
I'm here. Go on. I don't want you.
I just wanted to finish. No, go ahead. Okay, well, I just wanted to make that point.
All right. You have a good one.
Okay,
There you go. Y'all, hey, listen, don't y'all be calling in from work getting in trouble. People come looking for you. You be hiding off on the call. All right? We don't want nobody. We can't. ADOS ain't got no jobs. We can't be losing jobs. I'm going to 336. 336. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, this is Wes. I'm calling from North Carolina. I just first and foremost want to say thank you to what you and Tone do. Education is super important. A lot of us died trying to get it. Above the right to vote, the right to read was the one that killed us first. I do want to speak to the article really quickly. He definitely committed himself to the bootstrap mentality, but included with that is adhering to a subjective interpretation of history. So when you do that, you personalize your experience and you make it everybody else's potential experience, and he's even done that in accord to his ancestors, and it's pretty perverse. But I believe that he believes that. As I and you, I'm sure many of us know people who just believe that they will their way out of a situation, and everybody else can do it if they can do it. And that's a sad case because it's totally disproven in accord to history. I myself am a historian, so countless stories that counteract that completely, that blow it out the water. But there's still those that want to feel good about their plight and how they persevered in life, and they want to apply it to everybody else when it doesn't fit. I once again want to thank you guys, and important in that is, as I mentioned, I'm a historian. You are using history as it is supposed to be used. And so many other leaders, so many other people that claim to be something that they're not, the charlatans, they don't cite history properly, and it's a damn shame. So I commend you guys, I really do.
I thank you, fam. I appreciate it. I appreciate you calling in. Yeah, I think one of the things that happens is that, like, history books are written, and history books have all of that good stuff in them. And what happens is, like, nobody, like, I always talk about weaponizing the information, because we have a lot more information too than we used to have. We have a lot more studies than we used to have. So somebody has to do something with that to paint the picture, to give context to our particular situation and make a case for what we need in terms of reparations and the wider black agenda. It's not just reparations. Like, we have a black agenda too. It's not just one thing, because there's stuff that we have to have just as citizens. Like, that doesn't, without the crew disadvantage, you still got to fix the water in Flint. You still got to fix the hookworm, but that's not part of reparations. That's just what we're supposed to get as citizens in this country. You're supposed to maintain our infrastructure. Like, that's just citizens. Like, that's a whole nother thing. Like, I don't think we really understand how much we have been robbed here, and like what we're owed. And I think that's a real problem as we try to navigate this space. I'm going to 424. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, what's up, Yvette? This is Chris calling from Cali.
What's going on, Chris?
Nothing much. I just want to thank you for your platform. You really broke down a lot of information. You made things a lot clearer.
Thank you.
You and Tone and whatnot. So, as far as like the book club and whatnot, you kind of got me back into reading.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to look at no books. I ain't gonna lie. So I appreciate you on that, though.
No problem.
But my question is to you: if you've been going to depth on how to actually research your ancestry back to slavery, I mean, like, how do you actually go about doing that?
That's hard. That's hard. I mean, it depends, and it depends on a lot of stuff. It depends on like how much of your family is still alive, like how much records did they keep, and a lot of times you end up having to go to like somebody who. I mean, it's funny. Like you see Bill Gates. I mean, not Bill Gates. Talking about Microsoft. Henry Louis Gates talking about that, and like he really does put the research in. But like if you have an ancestor who's a sharecropper or whatever, like if you can go back and see that, you can trace that, you can be pretty sure like that goes back to that. Like, but you would need like some expertise, or like some people have families that really kept good history. Like I have some decent history on one side of my family, and on the other side I don't have as much, because that's part of like this loss and this kind of being cut off is part of what happened to us, right? But like, that's part of what it is. But the thing is, like when we do reparations, like there's a way to really kind of get into this, and there's a way to really do that. But that we can't do this on our own. Like it's not like we are like as individual people. If your family didn't keep that, you can trace it back. Like I had somebody on this show, who was it that called in the last time and said his talk about his ancestor that traced all the way back to like slavery or whatever. Like a lot of people have that and they've passed that down. Because our families have been torn apart, though, a lot of people don't have that. And that's part of part of that is like the government's job too, to kind of come in and say this is what it is. The government, they was never forced to set up the infrastructure, to for reparations. So the infrastructure is part of like setting this up and make sure we have it and we have these databases, and hopefully that's something that we can do. But like it's hard for us because our families have been torn apart in so many different ways. Even after slavery, when you talk about the people who left and they were trying to find their family, and then when people got murdered, and you talk about the disruption of family, even in terms of mass, it's so much. It's so much. But like it's there. You can do that.
I see. Well, I appreciate it.
No problem. And I think that's part of what has to happen too. The government has to set that up. Like you gotta help us piece our stuff back together. You gotta help us do it. It has to happen. I'm going to the last caller for the evening. I am going now to 919. 919, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hello.
What's going on?
Bruce? Hey, Yvette.
Hey.
I'm constantly running into this homespun, notion of, because America has advanced technologically, Black people are doing better. I constantly run into this with talking to my coworkers, my peers, that there's an association, like, because America is so successful that we're successful. I'm not quite sure how to deal with that.
Well, I mean, but the data says that we're not. Like the data says that we're the bottom 50% is worth less than $1. Like, see, there's this idea that like, well, because America has technology now, you can make beats with your phone, and you can make a movie with your phone, and you can be like, you can do that. And it's just like I put up an article here because Donald Glover says some of the same stuff. Like, you can be creative. Yeah, you can be creative with your phone. You absolutely can. You can be creative with your computer. You absolutely can. But the question becomes this: what needs to happen for you to translate that kind of creativity that you have with your phone or your computer or with a piece of paper? That's not technology, but what has to happen for that to be translated into something that benefits you monetarily, right? And elevates you wealth-wise. Well, when you look at like Donald Glover's song Redbone, there was a whole white music apparatus that put his stuff out there, shared him on different platforms, promoted him. They had a whole plan, and you see that like that wouldn't have been possible without white capital. So regardless of how creative you are, like if there's not a wealth of capital behind you to kind of put that in the space that it needs to be in, and put that in the hands that it needs to be in, and have an exchange, because hey, I need you to play this record on Apple and make it be one of trending, but I'm gonna do this for you in exchange. That's it. It's not just about being creative. You can be creative all day, but you need that to be able to be put out into like America for purchase as a commodity or whatever. And ain't nobody like, even, and we're in the digital era now, people say, well, you can put something on SoundCloud. Well, how many people put beats and stuff on SoundCloud or whatever? That's a saturated. So there has to be, what makes you stand out amongst a saturated market is capital. because that's advertisement. That's putting you in the spaces. That's putting you on these different streaming platforms. If you can't do the stuff you can't do all that advertising and all of that without capital. So capital is like the engine. It's like the boosters for, like, even if you have creativity. Without that, I don't care what you do in your basement or with your phone or with technology. You know, you know, it has to have that. And even Donald Glover's summer song, I forget what it had, was Summertime or something like that. Like, that was a great song. It should have been like, but it wasn't. It didn't get promoted like that. So what happened is it just flopped. But it was a great song. You can do a great project. You can be very creative. But if you don't have that institutional support in terms of the music industry or whatever industry you're working in, you flop. Like, somebody has to pick that up. Somebody with wealth and somebody with positionality and somebody with social capital has to pick that up and be like, you know what? I like this. I want to support this. Without that, nothing happens. So that's what you should tell.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, fam. Fam, we are at the end. I apologize as usual to my callers who did not get through. Hopefully next time. We took about 10 calls tonight, like 9 to 10. So we got through as many as we could. I apologize for the technical issues. Things happen. For those of you who came late, please remember that this is going to be our next. Let me bring it up a little bit bigger. This is going to be our next book club book. How the Irish became white. How the Irish became white. It's only like 170 pages, I think. So it's not like a really thick read. So please, please, please. August 1st, that's a Thursday. August 1st, that's a Thursday. That's when we'll be reading that book. We will have the Monday and Wednesday show as usual. And on Thursday, we will be reading How the Irish Became White. And we will be having that interesting conversation. Before you go, fam, please, please, please hit that like button. If you have not hit the like button already, please hit that like button for me. I would appreciate it. Please share this if you can share it. Please also hit that notifications bell. If you have not hit that bell, please hit that bell. If you haven't subscribed. If you want to donate recurrently, you can go to patreon.com/ycarnell. You can do all that. DonateBrown.com. Please, if you have not, add your name to subscribe to Brown.com. That's totally free, but I just like to have all the emails at one place. So if anything happens, if anything goes down, I have a way to reach everybody who shows up for the conversation and political education, fam. And I think that's going to be it for tonight. So please get your libations. On the East Coast, we're after midnight. So please get your libations and get yourself ready for bed. Shout out to everybody who did meetups. I've been busy running around, but I saw that Atlanta did a meetup and the turnout was great. Shout out to everybody who's been doing meetups in your own community. It's beautiful, beautiful ADOS people doing the ADOS thing. It's wonderful. And we're doing it. So good night, everybody. And please, again, please like before you leave. I appreciate it. All right, fam.